6 months into the war, the Valorian collective was beginning to feel pressure in ways they had never experienced. The human fleet had shifted from defensive operations to active offense, but not in the way Raltesh had expected. Instead of attacking military targets, they had started hitting commerce. Captain Minho had proposed what he called the merchant strategy during a fleet commander's meeting. Admiral Dayun had listened to his presentation with interest. The Valorian economy depends on trade between their 40 systems, Minho explained. They've never had to protect their shipping because no one has ever threatened it. Their merchant vessels are completely unarmed and travel on predictable routes. If we disrupt their trade, they'll have to spread their military forces thin to protect commerce. That weakens their offensive capability and costs them economically. You want to attack civilian ships? One commander asked, uncomfortable with the idea. No. I want to capture them, take their cargo, and send the crews home in escape pods with a message. Stay out of our space. We hurt their economy without killing civilians. It's cleaner than direct military confrontation. Dayun had approved the plan. Within 2 weeks, human raiders had captured 40 Valorian merchant vessels. The economic impact was immediate and severe. The Valorian collective's economy, which had grown comfortable with safe trade routes, suddenly faced uncertainty. Insurance rates skyrocketed. Merchants refused to travel without military escort. The collective's Supreme Council was forced to divert warships from offensive operations to patrol duty. Raltesh watched his forces scatter across Valorian space, trying to protect hundreds of shipping lanes. His concentrated battle fleets were breaking up into small patrol groups. Exactly what the humans wanted. This isn't warfare, he protested to his advisors. This is piracy. The humans call it economic warfare, sir. They have extensive historical examples. Apparently they've been doing this to each other for thousands of years. Meanwhile, Stealth Commander Jiwan was conducting operations that the Valorians insisted were impossible. She led a squadron of human ships in what they called silent running. The ships would power down to minimal levels, coast through space using only momentum, and strike targets deep inside Valorian territory before anyone knew they were there. The Valorians insisted that human reactor technology couldn't maintain life support at such low power levels. They were right. It couldn't comfortably. Human crews simply endured freezing temperatures, limited oxygen, and cramped conditions for days or weeks at a time. They treated it as part of the job. Jiwan's squadron had destroyed 3 Valorian supply depots, 2 repair facilities, and 1 command station without losing a single ship. They would drift into a system like ghosts, strike hard and fast, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. How are they surviving with reactors at that power level? Raltesh demanded after the 3rd attack. We believe they're just accepting the discomfort, sir. Our psychological profiles suggest humans have a much higher tolerance for suffering than most species. They're literally willing to freeze in the dark for tactical advantage. The most shocking incident came when the UDS Busan, badly damaged in a fleet engagement, suddenly changed course and rammed a Valorian supply depot at near light speed. The depot was completely destroyed. The Busan and its entire crew were lost. Raltesh reviewed the footage in horror. It was an accident, he said. They lost control of the ship, but then the communications intercept came through. The Busan's captain had sent a final transmission just before impact. 3 words. Worth it, sir. It hadn't been an accident. The captain, knowing his ship was crippled and unable to make it home, had deliberately turned it into a weapon, and his crew had apparently agreed with the decision. They had sacrificed themselves willingly for a tactical objective. They're insane, Raltesh whispered. Completely insane. His tactical officer looked pale. Sir, I've been reviewing human military history. This type of action is not unprecedented for them. They have a long history of deliberate sacrificial tactics. They even have a word for it in multiple languages. Kamikaze, suicide mission, death or glory. They don't just accept casualties. Sometimes they plan for them. Dr. Hyejin had been working with human military intelligence to develop psychological profiles of Valorian leadership. Her team had studied captured communications, analyzed decision patterns, and built predictive models. The results were being distributed to all human commanders. The models were remarkably accurate. Valorian officers followed hierarchical decision-making trees. They had been trained in specific doctrines and adhered to them even when circumstances changed. Given a particular situation, there were only a few likely responses a Valorian commander would make. Human commanders, armed with these profiles, could predict Valorian tactics with eerie accuracy. It was like playing chess against someone whose next 10 moves you already knew. Captain Minho used this advantage during the Battle of Ross 128. His fleet was outnumbered 3-1. The Valorian commander, following standard doctrine for numerical superiority, divided his forces to envelop the human fleet from multiple angles. Minho had predicted this exactly. He had positioned his ships where the Valorian commander would expect to trap them, but he had also seeded the area with thousands of sensor drones that created false readings. When the Valorian ships moved to surround the human fleet, they were actually surrounding empty space while the real human ships hit them from an unexpected angle. The Valorian commander never adapted. He kept trying to complete his envelopment maneuver because that's what doctrine said to do. By the time he realized he'd been deceived, he had lost half his fleet. Meanwhile, the Valorian collective was beginning to experience something new: internal dissent. Several of the 17 species they had conquered were watching humanity's success and reconsidering their own situations. If humans could fight back effectively, maybe they could too. The first rebellion started on a world the Valorians called Conquest 9. The native species had been subjugated for 80 years. They rose up, attacking Valorian installations and demanding independence. The Valorian military had to divert forces to suppress the rebellion. Then another conquered world rebelled. Then another. The Valorian collective, which had never fought on multiple fronts simultaneously, suddenly found itself struggling to contain spreading unrest while still trying to defeat humanity. Raltesh sent an urgent request to the Supreme Council. "We need reinforcements. The humans have inspired resistance across our territory. We cannot fight on all these fronts with our current forces." The response was swift and brutal. Request denied. The humans are a minor power with limited resources. Complete the conquest with available forces. Suppress the rebellions efficiently. Your performance has been disappointing. Raltesh stared at the message. His superiors didn't understand what was happening. They still thought humans were a minor threat that could be dealt with using standard approaches. They didn't realize that humanity had changed the fundamental nature of this conflict. Admiral Daeun made a decision that surprised many of her officers. Instead of continuing purely military operations, she authorized a cultural offensive. Human ships began broadcasting to Valorian worlds. Not propaganda, but simply humanity's collected works of art. Philosophy, music, and literature. Show them who we are, she told her communications officers. Show them what they're trying to destroy. The broadcasts had an unexpected effect. Many Valorians, especially younger ones, were fascinated by human culture. Human music was chaotic but energetic. Human art was diverse and strange. Human philosophy raised questions that Valorian society had never considered. Some Valorian officers began to question whether conquering such a species was worth the cost. A few even defected, their ships appearing at human stations requesting asylum. They brought intelligence, yes, but more importantly, they brought doubt back to their own society. Engineer Tai Yang, still aboard the Incheon, had developed a new weapon that was almost comedic in its approach. He called them psychological mines. They didn't explode. They just broadcast unsettling sounds and lights. Random noises, flickering lights, strange patterns that meant nothing but looked meaningful. Valorian crews would encounter these mines and, not knowing what they did, would abandon positions that were perfectly safe. The mines cost almost nothing to produce and caused chaos far beyond their actual threat. "It's not about the weapon," Taeyang explained. "It's about making them scared of what the weapon might be. Humans are very good at using fear as a tool. We've been scaring each other for entertainment for thousands of years." Captain Minho pulled off perhaps his most audacious victory during a confrontation near Valorian space. His ship, the Incheon, encountered a Valorian flagship with heavy escort. By all logic, Minho should have retreated. Instead, he did something from ancient human naval warfare. He disguised his ship as a damaged Valorian vessel, broadcasting distress signals using captured Valorian codes. The flagship, following doctrine to assist damaged friendly ships, approached to offer aid. By the time they realized the Incheon was human, Minho had boarding parties on their hull. The Valorian flagship was captured intact, with its admiral and entire command staff taken prisoner. "She's right," he said to Sora. "We don't fight fair. We don't fight clean. We don't follow the rules. And that's 3 months into the war. Raltesh had assembled the finest strategic minds in the Valorian collective. 12 admirals sat around the holographic table, each one a veteran of multiple conquests. They had been studying human tactics for weeks, searching for patterns they could exploit. "Show me what you found," Raltesh ordered. The lead analyst activated the display. Hundreds of tactical patterns appeared, each one color-coded and labeled. "Sir, we've identified 2,347 distinct tactical approaches used by human forces. They range from ancient historical maneuvers to completely novel strategies we've never encountered." 2,000? Raltesh stared at the numbers.
How is that possible?
"They use all of them, sir. Sometimes in the same battle. A human commander will employ a 3,000-year-old flanking maneuver, then immediately switch to a modern adaptive formation, then do something completely unprecedented. They mix time periods, mix doctrines, mix everything." One of the admirals spoke up. "There must be a master pattern, some underlying principle that connects them all." The analyst looked uncomfortable. "We believe there is, sir. The principle seems to be do whatever works in the moment regardless of doctrine. They're not following a system. They're creating new tactics in real time based on immediate conditions." "That's not warfare," another admiral protested. "That's improvisation." "Yes, sir. They're improvising, constantly, and they're very good at it." Raltesh dismissed the meeting and sat alone with the data. He pulled up footage from the most recent engagement, a battle near the mining colony on Kepler 442. Commander Junho had led the human defense there, and the Valorians had lost badly. The battle had started normally. Valorian forces approached in standard attack formation. The humans fell back, appearing to retreat. Raltesh's forces had pursued, following doctrine perfectly. Then the humans had led them into an asteroid field. But it wasn't just an ambush. The humans had been hiding in that asteroid field for 3 days, waiting. They had positioned ships throughout the field, powered down to avoid detection. Crews living in cold and darkness just for the element of surprise. When the Valorians entered the field, human ships appeared from everywhere at once. 37 Valorian vessels destroyed. 8 human ships damaged, none destroyed. And the human crews had been living in uncomfortable conditions for days just to set up the trap. "They're willing to suffer for tactical advantage," Raltesh muttered. "They'll accept discomfort, risk, even casualties if it means winning." He pulled up another file, this one about a human named Nari. She was listed as a communications specialist, but what she had done was unprecedented. She had hacked into Valorian military networks not with sophisticated technology, but by pretending to be a Valorian logistics officer. She had sent fake supply orders, created phantom maintenance schedules, and generally caused chaos in the Valorian supply chain. When her deception was discovered, and the security protocols were updated, she had already moved on to a different approach. Now she was broadcasting fake distress signals that pulled Valorian ships out of position. The worst part was that her methods were simple. Any competent intelligence officer should have been able to prevent them. But the Valorians had never encountered an enemy that used deception so casually and creatively. Their security was designed to stop sophisticated attacks, not someone just lying convincingly. Admiral Dayoun had authorized something called Operation Madhouse 2 weeks ago. Raltesh had recordings of it, and watching them made his head hurt. Human fleets had begun broadcasting random communications on all frequencies. Some were clearly fake orders. Some were obvious nonsense. Some seemed important but led nowhere. Valorian intelligence had spent thousands of hours trying to decode the sophisticated encryption. They had assigned entire teams to pattern analysis. And then they had captured a human communications officer who explained, while laughing, that there was no encryption. The humans were just saying random things to waste Valorian time and resources. "It's not even warfare," the captured officer had said. "It's just trolling on a galactic scale." Raltesh didn't know what trolling meant, but his translator suggested it was something like deliberately annoying someone for amusement. The humans were treating war like a game. They were having fun. He pulled up the latest reports from the front lines. Human fighter pilots had started painting messages on their ships. Insults in Valorian script. "Is this your best?" and "My grandmother fights better" were common. One pilot had painted "Thanks for the target practice" across her entire hull. His psychological warfare advisors were baffled. "Sir, this behavior serves no tactical purpose. It's just meant to anger us. And is it working? Yes, sir. Our pilots are making mistakes because they're trying to shoot down the ships with insulting messages first, even when those aren't the most dangerous targets. Raltesh closed his eyes. The humans had weaponized mockery. They had turned insults into a tactical advantage. What kind of species did that? Commander Junho's latest transmission had been sent directly to Raltesh. It was short. You're getting better. Keep practicing. Maybe in another century you'll be ready for a real fight. The message had been delivered after Junho had destroyed a Valorian supply depot using a tactic from ancient human naval warfare. He had disguised his ships as merchants, approached the depot broadcasting friendship codes, and then opened fire at point-blank range before the Valorians realized they'd been tricked. It was a strategy that shouldn't work in an age of advanced sensors and identification systems. But the humans had used signal jammers, false transponders, and the Valorians' own assumptions against them. The Valorians assumed that such primitive deception was beneath a spacefaring species. The humans had no such pride. Raltesh reviewed casualty reports. In 3 months, the Valorian collective had lost over 200 ships. Human losses were less than 60, and more worrying than the numbers was the trend. Human tactics were getting more aggressive, more creative, more unpredictable. Meanwhile, his own forces were becoming hesitant. Commanders who had been confident before were now second-guessing every decision. They knew that humans might do anything, so they were afraid to commit to any course of action in case it was exactly what the humans wanted. His intelligence division sent him a compilation of human entertainment media. They had been studying it to understand human psychology. What they found was disturbing. Humans created fictional stories about warfare for entertainment. They played games that simulated combat. They studied historical battles the way other species studied art or philosophy. One analyst had written, "War is not something humans do when necessary. War is something they're always preparing for, always thinking about, always ready to engage in. Peace for humans is just the time between wars when they get ready for the next one." Pilot Yuna had become famous among both human and Valorian forces. She flew a fighter that was painted bright red with golden flames. On the side, in Valorian script, she had written, "Catch me if you can." She had been in 43 combat engagements and had never been hit. Her tactics made no sense. She flew patterns that wasted fuel and energy. She took risks that should have gotten her killed. She deliberately drew fire to protect other ships, and she was constantly broadcasting on open channels, making jokes and comments about Valorian flying skills. "That one moves like a drunk asteroid," she had said about one Valorian pilot. "I've seen better flying from cargo haulers." The Valorian pilot, enraged, had broken formation to chase her. Yuna had led him on a 30-minute pursuit through a debris field before he crashed into a destroyed ship he hadn't been watching for. Yuna had circled the wreckage once and broadcast, "See? Cargo haulers." Raltesh wanted to be angry about her behavior, but he couldn't help a grudging respect. She was a warrior in the purest sense, completely committed to combat and seemingly fearless. The problem was that every human seemed to be like her to some degree. They all treated warfare as something between a profession and a sport. Dr. Hyojin's latest report had reached Valorian intelligence through captured data. Raltesh read it with growing despair. She had compared Valorian military doctrine to human approaches and concluded that the Valorians were fighting a textbook war against an opponent that had already read all the textbooks and decided they were just suggestions. The Valorian collective has developed an excellent military system, she had written. It's logical, tested, and effective against rational opponents. Unfortunately, human military thought includes irrationality as a deliberate tool. We don't just break the rules. We study the rules specifically to learn how to break them most effectively. Raltesh called another meeting with his commanders. "We need to change our approach. The humans are adapting faster than we are. Every time we develop a counter to one of their tactics, they're already using 3 new ones. What do you suggest, Supreme Commander? We stop trying to outthink them. We accept that they're more creative than us in combat. Instead, we use our advantages, numbers, and resources. We overwhelm them with force. Simple, direct, no clever tactics they can exploit." It was a reasonable plan. It might even have worked. But Raltesh was about to... The Valorian pursuit ships realized their mistake too late. What had looked like random panic was actually a carefully planned trap. The human vessels had positioned themselves in a three-dimensional net, and the Valorian ships had flown right into it. Lieutenant Sora fired first. Her frigate's railguns sent tungsten rods screaming through space at a fraction of light speed. The Valorians had shields designed to deflect energy weapons. The metal rods punched straight through them like they weren't even there. 3 Valorian destroyers exploded in the first volley. The survivors tried to return fire, but the human ships were already moving, dancing between shots with an agility that seemed impossible for vessels their size. Aboard his flagship, Raltesh watched his tactical display with growing horror. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "Those maneuvers aren't efficient. They're wasting fuel and energy." His tactical officer studied the patterns. "I don't know, Supreme Commander. They're not following any doctrine I recognize. Each ship seems to be operating independently, but somehow they're still coordinated." That was exactly right. Human ships didn't follow rigid formation protocols. Each captain had authority to make instant decisions. They communicated constantly, adjusted to each other's movements, and covered each other's weaknesses without being ordered to do so. It was organized chaos, and it was devastatingly effective. Captain Minho's voice came across the fleet channel. "All ships, they're trying to reform their main battle line. Don't let them. Keep them fragmented. Sora, take your squadron and hit their left flank. Make noise. I want them looking at you." "Understood," Sora replied. Her 3 frigates broke away and accelerated toward the Valorian formation. They fired everything they had, missiles and railguns and laser batteries all at once. Most of the shots missed, but that wasn't the point. The point was to draw attention. The Valorian ships turned to face this new threat exactly as Minho had predicted. That's when the real attack came from behind them. 12 human destroyers had been coasting silently on the other side of an asteroid, powered down to minimal levels. Now they lit up their engines and crashed into the Valorian rearguard like a hammer. Engineer Taeyang's modifications to the Incheon proved their worth in the first 30 seconds of close combat. The mining lasers, designed to cut through solid rock, sliced into Valorian hull plating with casual ease. One Valorian cruiser lost its engine section when Taeyang's cutting beam simply carved it away from the main hull. "This is amazing," Taeyang shouted over the engineering channel. "Admiral, we need to put these on every ship." "Write a report," Dane's voice came back, calm as ever. After the battle, the fighting lasted 47 minutes. The betting pools aboard the human ships had mostly predicted correctly. By the time Raltesh ordered a retreat, he had lost 42 ships. The humans had lost 12, mostly smaller vessels that had taken risks to protect larger ones. As the Valorian fleet limped away, Minho ordered his ships not to pursue. "Let them go. They need to report back what happened here. They need to tell their leaders that humans aren't easy prey." Sora looked at him curiously. "You wanted them to escape?" "Of course. If we destroyed them completely, the Valorians would just send another fleet blind. This way they know what they're facing. They'll be scared. Scared enemies make mistakes." Back on Earth, Dr. Heejin was watching the battle footage with intense focus. She had access to every sensor recording, every communication, every tactical decision made by both sides. What she saw fascinated and disturbed her in equal measure. The Valorians fought like a machine. Every move was calculated, every decision followed clear protocols. They had obviously studied warfare extensively and developed a sophisticated military system. It was impressive in its precision and efficiency. The humans fought like they were insane. Ships broke formation for no apparent reason. Captains made split-second decisions that violated basic tactical theory. They used weapons in ways that weren't meant to be used. They took risks that should have gotten them killed. And somehow it worked. Hyejin started writing her analysis. She titled it Chaos Theory in Combat: Why Humans Fight Like They're Insane. The more she wrote, the clearer the pattern became. Humans didn't fight like a military force. They fought like 10,000 years of evolution had wired them for creative violence. Every human captain had studied the same basic tactics that the Valorians used. They knew the textbook strategies. They just didn't care about following them. Instead, they used that knowledge as a foundation and then improvised wildly on top of it. One section of her report read, "The Valorians have created a perfect military system. It's logical, efficient, and proven through 3 centuries of success. Unfortunately for them, they're fighting a species that has been breaking perfect systems for their entire existence. Humans don't beat tactics with better tactics. They beat tactics with chaos. She sent the report to Admiral Dayoun and to the United Defense Council. Within an hour, it was required reading for every human ship captain in the fleet. Meanwhile, Raltesh reached Valorian space and immediately called an emergency meeting of his senior commanders. They gathered in the holographic briefing room of his flagship, each one looking shaken. "Explain to me," Raltesh said slowly, "how we lost 42 ships to an inferior force." His tactical officer spoke carefully. "Supreme Commander, I don't believe they were inferior. Their technology is comparable to ours, but their tactics, I've never seen anything like it. They don't follow standard engagement protocols." "Everyone follows engagement protocols," Raltesh snapped. "War is about order and discipline, not for humans, apparently." The tactical officer pulled up footage from the battle. "Watch this sequence. The human commander sends a small force to attack our left flank. We respond by turning to face them. That's correct doctrine, but it was a feint. The real attack came from behind while we were distracted." "That's basic strategy," Raltesh said. "Feints are nothing new." "Yes, sir. But watch what happens next. After the feint succeeds, the human ships that were the bait don't retreat to safety. Instead, they charge directly into our formation from the front while the main force attacks from behind. It's suicide. Those ships should have been destroyed. But they weren't? No, sir. Because the rest of their fleet adjusted to cover them. Not because they were ordered to, but because each captain independently decided to support the others. It's like they all think the same way without needing to communicate." Another commander spoke up. "I've reviewed the intercepted human communications during the battle. They were talking to each other constantly. Not giving orders, just talking. Sharing information, making suggestions, sometimes making jokes." "Jokes?" Raltesh couldn't believe it. "In the middle of combat?" "Yes, sir." One human captain told another that his flying looked drunk. The second captain laughed and said that was the point. Then they proceeded to execute a joint maneuver that destroyed 3 of our ships. Raltesh sat down heavily. 300 years of conquest. 17 species defeated, and now humans were laughing while they destroyed his fleet. Something fundamental about the universe had just changed, and he didn't understand what. "Get me everything we have on human history," he ordered. "I want to know who we're fighting." The data that came back made things worse, not better. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. Not occasional conflicts for important reasons, but constant, endless warfare. They fought over land, resources, ideology, religion, and sometimes for no clear reason at all. Their planet had been divided into hundreds of separate nations, and those nations had spent thousands of years fighting each other. They had developed weapons that could destroy their entire world. They had created military academies where they studied nothing but warfare for years. They had written thousands of books about tactics, strategy, and the philosophy of combat. The Valorian collective had conquered 17 species in 300 years. Humans had fought hundreds of wars among themselves in just the last century. They didn't just understand warfare. They were shaped by it, obsessed with it, perhaps even addicted to it. Raltesh read a translated human text called The Art of War, written thousands of years ago. Every principle in it was still being used by modern human commanders. Then he read commentaries on that text, and commentaries on the commentaries and modern updates and revisions and arguments about interpretation. Humans didn't just study war, they never stopped studying it. "We've made a terrible mistake," he said to his empty command room. "We thought we were declaring war on a young species. But they've been at war with themselves for their entire existence. We're not fighting humans. We're fighting 10,000 years of accumulated military experience." He sent a message to the collective's Supreme Council, requesting massive reinforcements and suggesting they reconsider the entire campaign. The response came back quickly. Denied. "You have adequate forces. Complete the conquest as planned. Do not request additional resources for such a minor operation." Raltesh looked at the message for a long time. Then he began preparing for the next battle, knowing that his superiors didn't understand what they were facing. In human space, Captain Minho was reading Dr. Hyejin's report and nodding along with her conclusions. The message came during breakfast time on Earth. Admiral Dayoun was drinking her 3rd cup of coffee when the communication alert flashed across every screen in the Pacific Defense Command Center. She set down her cup and watched as an alien face filled the display. The creature had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern and skin that shimmered like oil on water. It wore what appeared to be military decorations across its chest. When it spoke, the translation software rendered its words into flat, emotionless English. I am Supreme Commander Ral Tesh of the Valorian Collective. Your species has violated our territory. You have expanded into systems that belong to us by right of conquest. We have ruled this sector for 3 centuries. We have defeated 17 species. You will be the 18th. Daeun took another sip of coffee. Around her, junior officers looked worried. She just looked bored. You have 72 hours to surrender all human colonies and return to your home planet. Your vessels will be confiscated. Your people will serve the collective. If you refuse, we will destroy every human ship, station, and settlement beyond your atmosphere. This is not a negotiation. This is a declaration of war. The transmission ended. The command center fell silent. Then someone in the back started laughing. Within seconds, half the room was chuckling. Daeun allowed herself a small smile. "Get me Captain Minho," she said. On the other side of Earth, aboard the UDS Incheon floating in high orbit, Captain Minho was already reviewing the message. His tactical officer, a young woman named Sora, stood beside him with her arms crossed. "They gave us 72 hours, Sora said. "Should we evacuate the colonies?" Minho shook his head. "Why?" "They said they've conquered 17 species. Did you notice what they didn't say, sir? They didn't say how long those conquests took. They didn't mention any species that fought back successfully. They think this will be easy." Minho leaned back in his chair. "Pull up their tactical approach patterns from the sensor data." The screens showed the Valorian fleet movements from their brief appearance near human space. Minho studied them for exactly 45 seconds. "Textbook hammer and anvil," he said. "They split their forces, pinned the enemy between 2 groups, and crushed them. It's a good strategy. We stopped using it as our primary approach about 300 years ago because everyone knows how to counter it." Sora grinned. "So what do? We let them come, and we show them what humans do best." At the First Contact Institute in Geneva, Dr. Hyejin was already deep into analyzing everything humanity had learned about the Valorians. The data was limited, a few sensor scans, some intercepted communications, one brief visual contact, but it was enough. She pulled up comparison charts on her screen. The Valorian Collective controlled 40 star systems. They had been expanding for 300 years. By human standards, that was incredibly slow. Earth's various nations had fought over their own planet for thousands of years. They had developed, refined, and discarded more military strategies than most species ever invented. "Computer, show me human military conflicts in the last 500 years. The list scrolled past. Hundreds of wars, thousands of battles, millions of tactical variations. Humans fought over resources, territory, ideology, religion, and sometimes just because they were bored. They had turned warfare into an art form, a science, and a competitive sport. The Valorians had conquered 17 species. Hyejin pulled up what little information existed about those species. Most were peaceful. A few had basic military forces. None had anything resembling humanity's obsessive relationship with organized violence. She wrote a quick report and sent it to Admiral Daeun with a simple subject line. They have no idea what they're starting. The 72 hours passed quickly. Earth's United Defense Council held exactly one emergency meeting. It lasted 20 minutes. The conclusion was simple. Activate standard defensive protocols and send the fleet to expected conflict zones. No evacuation orders were issued. No state of emergency was declared. Stock markets barely fluctuated. The news media treated it as an interesting story but not a crisis. Some networks ran historical documentaries about human warfare. The most popular was titled 10,000 Years of Practice. Admiral Daeun assembled her fleet commanders for a briefing. 37 captains appeared on the holographic display. Their ships spread across human space. Minho was among them. "The Valorians think this is going to be easy," Daeun said. "They've studied our technology and found us comparable to their own. They've observed our ships and found them adequate. What they haven't studied is us." She pulled up a star map. "They'll hit Tau Ceti first. It's our newest colony, least defended and strategically positioned. Textbook target selection. Captain Minho, take the second fleet and meet them there." Minho nodded. "Rules of engagement?" "Standard. If they shoot, you shoot back. If they surrender, accept it. If they run, let them go, but track them. This is their war, not ours. We're just responding appropriately." "Understood. Any special tactics?" Daeun smiled. "Surprise me. You usually do. As the briefing ended, Engineer Taeyang approached Dayun privately. He was young, barely 30, but he had a reputation for creative problem-solving that bordered on chaos. Admiral, I have a request. Go ahead. The Incheon has some old mining equipment in storage. Laser cutters, plasma torches, that kind of thing. I want to install them on the hull. Those aren't weapons. No, ma'am, but they cut through rock really well. And I'm curious if they'd work on Valorian armor. Dayun considered this for exactly 3 seconds. Approved. Try not to blow yourself up. Taeyang grinned and rushed off. In his command ship approaching the edge of Valorian space, Tesh reviewed the intelligence reports on humanity one more time. The species was young by galactic standards. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. They had 3 colony worlds and a modest fleet of perhaps 400 vessels. The Valorian collective had over 2,000 warships. They had experience, tradition, and the confidence of 3 centuries of unbroken victory. This would be over quickly. His tactical officer, a veteran of 9 conquests, approached. Supreme Commander, our scouts report human ships gathering at Tau Ceti, approximately 70 vessels. Only 70? Tesh felt something close to disappointment. We're bringing 300 ships. This isn't even a fair fight. Should we offer them another chance to surrender? Tesh thought about it, then shook his head. No, they had their chance. Now they'll learn what it means to oppose the collective. Send the fleet forward. We attack at dawn. What Tesh didn't know, couldn't know, was that aboard those 70 human ships, thousands of crew members were placing bets on how long the battle would last. The over-under was 40 minutes. Most were betting on the under. Captain Minho sat in his command chair aboard the Incheon, watching the Valorian fleet approach on sensors. Beside him, Sora was running final checks on their weapon systems. They're coming in exactly as predicted, she said. Hammer and anvil formation. 3 prongs. Very orderly. Of course they are, Minho said. It's good tactics if your enemy is predictable. He activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships execute pattern chaos on my mark. Remember, make it look random but stay within the parameters. Let's show our new friends what happens when humans stop being polite. The Valorian fleet crossed into Tau Ceti space. Tesh gave the order to engage. His ships moved forward in perfect formation, a symphony of coordinated military precision. The human fleet scattered like startled fish. Tesh watched in confusion as human ships broke formation and fled in random directions. Some accelerated toward the Valorian fleet. Others retreated. A few spun in circles. It looked like complete chaos, like panic. They're running, his tactical officer said, surprise evident in his voice. Should we pursue? Tesh nodded slowly. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't identify what. Send the pursuit wings after them. Maintain formation with the main fleet. Standard engagement protocols. As the Valorian ship split up to chase the fleeing humans, Captain Minho smiled. Now, he said quietly. The scattered human ships suddenly stopped running. They turned, and they opened fire from positions that put the Valorian ships in perfect crossfire positions. The battle for Tau Ceti had begun, and the Valorians were already losing. The intelligence gained was valuable, but the psychological impact was devastating. If humans 10 months into the war, the Valorian collective was fracturing from within. What had started as a simple conquest had become a nightmare that threatened the entire structure of their civilization. The Supreme Council met in emergency session, and for the first time in 3 centuries, they were genuinely afraid. Tesh stood before them, his uniform showing signs of wear that would have been unthinkable before the war. Supreme Council, I must report that our current situation is unsustainable. We are fighting on 17 fronts simultaneously. The conquered species are in open rebellion. Human forces are operating deep inside our territory. Our economy is collapsing under the strain. One council member spoke, their voice sharp with disbelief. You are telling us that a species with 3 colony worlds and a few hundred ships has brought the Valorian collective to this state? Yes, Counselor. The humans are not like any enemy we have faced before. They do not fight to conquer territory. They fight to win by any means necessary. Every day they develop new tactics. Every engagement teaches them something we don't want them to learn. Then deploy overwhelming force. Use the reserve fleets. Tesh felt something close to despair. The reserve fleets are already deployed, Counselor. They are spread across our territory trying to protect shipping lanes, Suppress rebellions and guard against human raids. We no longer have concentrated striking power. Request additional forces from the collective's main battle fleet. I have made that request 7 times, Counselor. It has been denied 7 times. The Supreme Council, with respect, does not seem to understand the severity of our situation. The council members looked at each other. Finally, the senior counselor spoke. Very well, Supreme Commander. You have 1 more month to demonstrate progress. If you cannot achieve victory in that time, we will replace you with someone who can. Raltesh left the meeting knowing that victory was impossible. The question now was how to minimize the disaster. On Earth, Admiral Dayun was planning the next phase of human operations. She had called together her most innovative commanders for a strategy session. The mood was confident but not celebratory. Everyone understood this was serious business, even if they approached it with human creativity. The Valorians are weakening, she said. Intelligence suggests their economy is under severe strain. Rebellions are spreading across their territory. But they still have substantial military forces, and a desperate enemy can be dangerous. We need to end this decisively. Captain Minho spoke up. I propose we demonstrate to them exactly how outmatched they are. Not through destruction, but through a show of capability they can't ignore. Explain. We take a Valorian border world, not through bombardment or invasion, but through persuasion. We show them what we could do if we wanted to, then offer them a choice. Admiral Dayun considered this. It's risky. If it fails, we look weak. But if it succeeds, we end the war without destroying the Valorian collective completely. They're not evil, Admiral. They're just overconfident and outdated. Maybe we can show them a better path. The plan was approved. The target was chosen. A Valorian border world called Valor Prime. It had military installations but also a large civilian population. It would be a test of human precision and restraint. The operation began with engineer Taeyang's most ambitious project yet. Human ships approached Valor Prime and deployed thousands of small satellites around the planet. The Valorians assumed they were weapons and prepared for bombardment. Instead, the satellites began broadcasting. They broadcast human culture, music from every era and style, art from every human civilization, philosophy, poetry, scientific papers, historical documents, everything that made humanity more than just warriors. The broadcasts were sent in Valorian language, translated and explained. Simultaneously, Stealth Commander Jiwan's forces infiltrated the planet's military installations. Not to destroy them, but to demonstrate they could. They placed harmless markers throughout the bases, small devices that simply displayed messages. We were here. We could have destroyed this. We chose not to. The psychological impact was immediate. Valorian defenders realized that human forces had been inside their most secure facilities without being detected. If those had been bombs instead of messages, the entire military infrastructure would have been gone. But the most effective part of the operation was what Admiral Dayun did next. She broadcasted a message directly to the civilian population of Valor Prime. People of this world, we are not your enemy. Your government declared war on us. We have responded by defending ourselves. But we do not wish to harm civilians. We are showing you what human civilization is, not to threaten you, but to let you know what you're fighting against. We are artists and scientists. We are philosophers and explorers. We are also warriors because our history has taught us to be. But war is not what we want. We want to live, create, and explore the universe. We are offering your military commanders 1 chance. Stand down and we will leave peacefully. Refuse. And we will demonstrate why 3 centuries of easy victories did not prepare you for fighting humanity. The broadcast caused chaos on Valor Prime. Civilians protested in the streets, demanding their government accept the offer. Valorian military officers, seeing that human forces could have destroyed them, but chose dialogue instead, began questioning their orders. Within 48 hours, the Valorian garrison on Valor Prime surrendered without firing a shot. Several officers requested to meet with human commanders to discuss terms. It was an unprecedented event in Valorian history. Raltesh received the news and felt something break inside him. Valor Prime had fallen without a battle. Human forces had achieved through culture and psychology what they could have done through violence. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. It was completely unexpected. Dr. Hijin arrived on Valor Prime to help establish communication between humans and Valorians. She met with Valorian officers and civilians, listening to their perspectives. What she learned was enlightening. They truly believed they were superior, she reported back to Earth. Not out of malice, but because 300 years of easy victories taught them they were. They conquered 17 species without serious resistance. They assumed all species followed the same basic patterns of warfare. When they encountered humans, it was like their entire worldview shattered. She interviewed a young Valorian officer who had defected. Fighting humans is like fighting a force of nature, he told her. You plan based on logic and doctrine, and they respond with chaos and creativity. You defend against their known tactics, and they invent new ones. You think you understand their capabilities, and they show you something completely unexpected. How do you fight an enemy that treats warfare like an art they've been perfecting for 10,000 years? Specialist Nari, meanwhile, had been conducting her own operations. She had continued her information warfare campaign, but now she was doing something different. She was helping Valorian civilians access information their government had kept from them. She broke through censorship systems and allowed Valorians to see honest reports about the war. They learned their government had lied about casualties, about human intentions, about the reasons for the conflict. The truth spread through Valorian networks faster than their authorities could suppress it. Public opinion in the Valorian collective turned sharply against the war. Protests erupted on multiple worlds. Citizens demanded an end to the conflict. Some even called for the dissolution of the Supreme Council and major government reforms. Pilot Yuna, still flying her distinctive red fighter, had become something of a celebrity among both humans and Valorians. She had been in over 200 combat engagements without a single loss. Valorian pilots told stories about her, mythologizing her into an almost supernatural figure. During one engagement, she found herself in a dogfight with a young Valorian pilot who was clearly outmatched. Instead of destroying him, she broadcasted a message on a private channel. You're a good pilot. You shouldn't die in a stupid war your government started. Break off and go home. The Valorian pilot, surprised, did exactly that. He returned to his carrier and reported what had happened. The story spread. Humans apparently could be merciful even in combat. It was another crack in the Valorian certainty that this war was righteous. Captain Minho executed his final major operation of the war at this point. He led a strike force to a Valorian strategic command center deep inside their territory. Using every trick humans had developed, his forces penetrated to the heart of Valorian space. But instead of destroying the command center, he captured it intact. More importantly, he captured the database containing Valorian military plans, logistics networks, and command protocols. It was the intelligence coup that gave humans complete knowledge of Valorian military structure. Minho sent a message to Raltesh personally. We have your entire military database. We know every ship position, every supply route, every command code. We could end your military capability right now. But we're not going to, because this war is over, whether your Supreme Council admits it or not. We're giving you 1 week to open surrender negotiations. If you don't, we'll do what we should have done months ago and show you what total warfare actually looks like.